Are you a service-based business owner looking to increase profits to fund your lifestyle? Well, this podcast is for you. We bring you inspirational guests sharing actionable tips to solve many of the struggles you face each and every day. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Hi, Paul here. Before we get into the show, would you like to make a great first impression on LinkedIn? If so, I have something just for you. When people search for your name on Google, your LinkedIn profile will normally come up first. Before meeting someone for the first time, how often do they view your LinkedIn profile? For many coaches and consultants I begin to work with, their profiles don't do them any justice. I've created a simple solution where you can whip your profile into shape to have your best foot forward when attracting new clients on LinkedIn. Go to blgdownload.com, so that's blgdownload.com to get your 5 killer tips today. Hello to the Build, Live, Give podcast, episode number 0.5. I'm so excited you have chosen my podcast, and to be honest, I feel honored. So honored, I want to give you some guidance to make the experience enjoyable and also educational for you. As a podcaster and a podcast junkie, the first episode usually is very dated. It certainly was for me until I decided to do this, episode 0.5. In this episode, I will simply cover 5 key things. 1, why I started the podcast. 2, what can you expect by listening to the podcast. 3, some of my favorite episodes to give you a bit of a guidance. 4, other resources you can get from Build, Live, Give, and 5, how you can support the show. So, number 1, why I started the podcast. Episode 1 dropped on the 5th of May 2017. It was probably at least 6 months of me toying with the idea before it did. And as I mentioned, I was an absolute podcast junkie, and I still am. I listen to probably at least an hour a day at 2.5 times speed. And the guy that really kicked it off for me was John Lee Dumas. He has a brilliant podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire, and it's still going till today. And he really did kick it all off for me. He interviewed authentic entrepreneurs and experts surrounding them or supporting them. I wanted to do the same, but for people like me, corporate escapees, and you can hear more about that in episode 2. I was lucky to meet John and Kate in Brisbane in November 2017. It was significant to meet John in person and thank him for his inspiration. You can hear Kate's story, which also goes into John's at episode 52. I love to travel, but my inherited condition basically had my wings clipped. They said no more travel. So interviewing people from around the world from home made up for it. I absolutely love it. The last reason for my podcast, and probably the biggest, is that I wanted to give back. If you have a podcast, reach out and tell me what inspired you to start yours. So, number 2, what can you expect? The initial podcast was called Corporate Escapees, as I briefly mentioned, and that really covers episodes 2 to 133. I interviewed people like me who had left corporate and started their own business. They are conversational, 20 to 30 minutes in length, and there's both a mix of inspiration, their stories are amazing, and also some very practical lessons that you can take and implement. And yes, it was around, a lot of them were around starting your business, but to be honest, most of the people I interviewed have been in business for quite some time. So yes, they escaped corporate, but you'll get a lot of lessons about growing a significant business. And the format slightly changed around episode 1, 3, 4 onwards. You'll hear me say, welcome to the Build, Live, Give podcast. And really, I also changed the format. So there was a bit of background that I always go to on the guest first, a bit of their story, then build, so about what they do today and who they help, live, what habits that have made their life extraordinary. Give is how do they give back, and then the rapid fire, which is always 4 key questions. I think it started as 3, but now it's 4. It remains the same today with some little tweaks as I constantly update the questions, and think of it as freedom in a framework, where there's a framework, but the conversation always goes where the conversation needs to go. We also have experts on who help service-based business owners exclusively, right? So I collect them. I listen to podcasts, LinkedIn. I've got now about 2,000 experts that I've categorized, and we're working with about 400 of them supporting our community around the world. So it's a real benefit you'll get from listening to this. So need someone? Just try me. Email me and I'm sure I'll have at least 3 names for you in any category you can think of. So I launched my first solo show on episode 143. The format is simple and it stayed to today. It's 7 to 10 minutes where I give you practical lessons based on what I'm working on with my mentees. So I always talk both from the heart and the head, and it's really something that you can take away in that 7 to 10 minutes. Always recommend listening to myself at least 2 times speed. Hopefully you're using an app that does that. I use Pocket Cast, not sponsored, but it's a brilliant app both on Android and Apple. So number 3, some of my favorite episodes. Now this is a little bit like picking between my 2 children. I've got Tamsin and Liam, and this is really hard, but hey, let me have a go. So an early one. Episode 3 was Jeff Coombs, who talks about writing to cure cancer. An amazing guy. I know him personally, and it's one that's really inspiring. Number 25 is someone here in Australia who's renowned for her copywriting, and it's Valerie Khoo on how to write compelling content. Excellent. Then Josh Stanton. So you probably know Josh. He's got a huge following around the world, massive on Facebook groups, and he shares a lot of wisdom in episode 53, how to build a global lifestyle brand, helping entrepreneurs. Then number 61, I'll take that back, 61 is James Schramko. So he's been a great mentor for me for many years. He's got a brilliant podcast called Super Fast Business. I highly recommend you listening to it. And he talks about how to take responsibility for your life. And we go a little bit into our relationship as well. 71, Tom Swab, how to turn podcasting into your number 1 marketing advantage. And Tom is one of the best podcast valet services in the world. Then 72, a real hero of mine, someone that started off in IT and has now become a mega brand around the world. He's an Australian. His name's Nathan Chan. And what he takes us through is how you go from an IT nobody to one of the most recognized brands to entrepreneurs around the globe. 83, Nathan Hirsch, how to find the best freelancers in the world to help you scale, which I think is incredible. Number 96, Kelly Roach, how to live your life on your terms. Number 119, Mary Henderson, who's been a huge supporter of me and has recently helped me launch my personal website. And she talks about how to cut through the noise to position yourself as an authority, which I think is so important now. I'm not quite sure when you're listening to this, but if it's important now, it's always important. Then 132, a really good friend of mine, Tim Reed, a masterclass on how to win in marketing with your own business. And he's got the number 1 marketing podcast in Australia. Fantastic guy, very funny guy. And look, that's sort of my top 10. It was hard to pick. Just to throw in a bit of a bonus is Adil Amasi, number 236. So episode 236, and Marketing Reimagined through Copywriting. And he just gives you a brilliant template on how to write great copy. Do not miss that one. So number 4 is other resources. Look, I love giving my podcast away for free. I'd do this if I didn't get any benefit. It's just so therapeutic for me, and it's a great way of giving back, like I said. But I also have some other resources that I'd like you to check out if you're new, completely new to the brand Build, Live, Give. First is my book. I actually wrote it while I was on dialysis, waiting for my transplant, which you'd be happy to know that my transplant is great. I got it from my best friend. I talk about that in some of the shows. But my book is called Build, Live, Give, very original, considering the podcast and the company's called the same. I like to keep it simple. And it's on both Amazon and Audible. You'll find it there. And you can also find it on my website. Number 2 is LinkedIn posts. I post 3 times a week. You know, I really put my heart and soul into those posts, and you'll get the podcast. So if you'll get the podcast twice a week and then an individual post. And please connect and follow. So this is how you came across me. And my team will gladly accept your connection. And I'd love to find out more about you. Number 3 is my main personal brand website, which is paulhigginsmentoring.com. So all of my content's there. Most of it's for free, so please go and do that. And then the last one is buildlivegive.com, and that's got all my services, how I can help people around the world, particularly, my ideal clients are service-based business owners, and you'll find more about there. So last but not least, number 5, how can you support the show? Pretty simple, really. 3 key things. 1, subscribe. 2 is share it with others. So if you hear a great episode, share it with others. I love doing that when I listen to other podcasts. And as a host, I'd love if you did that for me. And they will love you for sharing that with them. And then the last one is give me feedback. It gets very lonely as a podcaster. I do get the odd person, but I ask every show, what's a topic you want covered? Give me feedback on the podcast. So as you listen through, do that. It really makes a difference. And I definitely will call you out in a positive way for doing that, and I will share it. So what have we covered in summary? Why I started my podcast, what you can expect, some of my favorite episodes, other resources, and how you can support the show. You can get all the show notes at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast. Please connect and follow me on LinkedIn, as I said. If you have a topic, right, I already want you to do it. If you have a topic you would like me to cover, just email me at paul@buildlivegive.com. Please take action to build a profitable and sustainable business. Stay well and enjoy the rest of the episodes.
Thanks for listening to the Build, Live, Give podcast. If you like what you heard, please share it and leave us a review. It would mean the world to us.